Alright, so the idea behind this video is very, very simple. Physical activities require energy, so do mental tasks, they require energy. Now, the idea that I had with this video is it also requires mental energy for you to do discipline and to have logical reasoning and push past your desires. This is what led me to this type of graph where there's the slow system, the fast system, you already know. The slow system costs energy, perfectly logical. With the fast system, it saves energy, but it's primal and habitualistic. Now, most people, when they imagine a disciplined person, they think of someone that is disciplined using the slow system. So they're the ones who are pushing past the pain, getting the work done anyway. That's what's pushed. Now, the problem with that is being disciplined and pushing past your desires and constantly doing the right thing no matter how you feel, it costs a lot of energy, especially in the beginning. With the fast system, it saves a lot of energy. Of course, it's primal and habitualistic, so a lot of the fast system you see making a lot of errors. Problem that a lot of people run into when they try and be disciplined is, since they remember that being disciplined is all about the slow system and it costing energy and logical, they try to be disciplined they try to always be in the slow system. They imagine discipline is taking up lots and lots of energy, when in fact it's actually the opposite. I've drawn this much prettier diagram to show you exactly what I mean. A disciplined person has a much bigger energy to time efficiency, or energy to task efficiency. They can spend 5 hours and maybe only use 10% of their mental energy in that time frame. Whereas an undisciplined person might do a very hard task and it take up 80% of their energy. And yeah, they're living the dream where it's pushing past your desires and overriding your willpower, but in the end, it bleeds your energy dry, and having zero energy is what causes your slow system to immediately switch into the fast system. Your brain gets fried and you go to the fast system, which is primal and habitualistic, your biggest habits, and you're primed to enjoy desires, so you naturally relapse. And so the key in being disciplined is to actually not spend that much energy on doing disciplined tasks. Or in other words, being energy efficient with every task that you do, it not requiring much mental energy to overcome the desires. So this is how the daily discipline chart version 1 has been created. It's still very much in the draft and looks a little bit messy, but it's got two parts. It's got the identification chart to understand where you are, and it's got the kind of energy maxing guide. Of course, this is just a draft. To max out your energy, there are 4 different quadrants that I've put. There's the resolve, motivation, reserve, and framing. Resolve is all about why you should do it. It's understanding kind of the logic behind it. It's giving your mind an actual reason into why you're doing a considerably harder task, like doing a work session when your work's already done, and if it's not making you that much money, your brain starts to find it pointless. Motivation is how much do I want to do it? So this is more feelings based. That's why I call that motivation. The reserve is how much energy do I have to work with to do all these tasks. So it's about increasing the max amount of energy by staying healthy, and also making sure it doesn't bleed out on useless tasks. And that's increasing with your habits and making sure that you actually feel good. Otherwise, just doing any task, if it drains your energy, then you're gonna have a lot less energy to work with, to use that on the harder tasks and making sure that you actually stay disciplined during those tasks. And then there is the framing, which is how hard is it really? And that's just all about understanding how much further you can go. If you're trying to do a considerably 1 hour work session and you're on 10 hours of sleep, but you've been on 2 hours of sleep and just done 10 hours of work, then comparing the two, it's a lot easier for you to do that task. This would make tasks a lot easier if you know that you could and have done in the past a lot harder tasks. So these 4 quadrants all make or break your energy spending efficiency. I'll now just go over each one to understand how you can increase it and at the very least diminish all the things that make it very, very low. So resolve is kind of the first thing that people think about when it comes to discipline, especially when it comes to purpose and goals. The difference between goals and purpose, I'll just go over this real quick. So goals are more physical. It's like, for example, make 10,000 by the end of 2025, something like that. Meanwhile, purpose is what type of person you want to become. Now, there are a few other things and reasons to why you should do it. There is reward. Reward is more of a straightforward, immediate reward. So if, let's say, you do a work session and afterwards you promise yourself to have a bit of candy, that would be a reward. Punishment is the exact opposite. It is a reason why you should do it, because bad things are going to happen, or bad things will happen if you won't do it. So punishment, reward, these are a lot more straightforward and they work great when it comes to getting you immediately motivated. You'll find that a lot of the tasks you currently do usually have some kind of reward or punishment behind them, and that's why you do them. Then there is desire, which I would only describe as kind of a mix between reward, purpose, and goals. Desire is a very tricky thing, but it's understanding your emotional and appealing to the emotional side of you. So that would be something like, could be something like wanting a woman, I guess, but it's whatever appeals to you emotionally, and usually it's not something that you'd want to say out loud, which is why I'm having a bit of a hard time giving you an example. But for example, wanting a woman or wanting status is another one. Whatever gets you emotionally happy and actually drives you forward. Desire is great to be aware of and great to set, as well as purpose and goals to remind yourself, because usually purpose and goals appeal to your slow system. Meanwhile, the fast system kind of gets left behind because you always view it as slow versus fast, or your logical side versus emotional side, when in reality you can very much hijack your emotional side with understanding the desires, and you can hijack that emotional side into motivation and actually wanting to do it and giving a fair reason to appeal to the emotional side as well as the logical side. Now there's also identity and beliefs. This is established over a while, and it's also kind of momentum. So after a while, as you start progressing in your discipline journey, and let's say you go to the gym for 6 months, your identity and beliefs change over that time. You become a person who goes to the gym, and when the brain asks you, why should I go to the gym? You just answer, because that's what I do. And also under identity, I'd put beliefs. It's just micro identities. And there you'd have something like, I work, being tired isn't real unless I'm like throwing up. Whatever you want to put there. Identity also encompasses that as well. And so when your brain asks why you should do it, you'd answer something like, I'll work no matter how hard it is, or I'll do the task no matter how I feel, yada yada, and that proves your belief identity. So on the next side, we have motivation, which is how much do I want it, which is more of an emotional type of basis. But the two main things here is perceived cost and other options. So mainly these are influenced by your environment. Perceived cost of doing the task would be like, how hard is it for me to do the G-work session? How hard do I think it will be hard for me? How hard do I think the work session will be? How hard do I think it is to study? And especially when it comes to startups, starting up, you will find yourself perceiving the cost of starting as very, very high. And usually you can lower that, and a lot of mental energy can be spent on trying to start up. But the worst type of energy that you should watch out for is misery, which is pretty much, misery would be just not enjoying the entirety of the, so misery is pretty much not enjoying the current moment. If you're like tired, or if you've recently quit social media and your dopamine is really low compared to the average line, yada yada. It's just when life's really, really not fun and you're in misery, doing something, making you doing anything is really, really hard. It can massively use your energy if you do the work session anyway. Because when it comes to the perceived cost, once you actually pay the cost, and it can only take you 5 minutes of your slow system to convince yourself to move to work. Then after 5 minutes, it goes to the fast system, which is you just doing the task and not really thinking much of it. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't use up your brain for the actual mental work. We're just talking purely discipline-wise. In the beginning, if you really don't want to do the work session, but you're trying to get yourself to, the slow system will kick in. You'll start costing a lot of energy to resist your desires. You'll try to use logic and convince yourself and just try to override your desire. That can cost a lot of energy. However, as you start going back into the work session, it'll switch into the fast system and you don't use nearly as much energy on discipline anymore. Now, misery offsets that into the entire workflow. This is why I would not recommend for beginners to go ahead and work anyway. If you're still not feeling like it after 5 minutes, if you force yourself to work for 5 minutes and you still find yourself really, really, really not enjoying work and it's not as important, I really don't recommend that you do it. At least try to find, at least for half an hour, do something else, reset your brain, go for a walk, and then try it again. If it's still there, then I don't know, you really should be careful with this, because misery, I've had this happen where you really don't want to work, you work anyway, you hate the entire time, and that'll just take up all of your energy throughout the entire day, and that can easily lead to relapse. To go back to the perceived cost, perceived cost is pretty much how hard do I think it is for me to do this task, and other options is just how easy is it for me to do other options like scroll social media, yada yada. And if you've read Atomic Habits, you'd know how to change these two. One of the things about perceived cost, and this plays back into misery as well, is to have the 5 or 2 minute rule, where you say I'll only work for 2 minutes, and if I still don't like it, I'll go do something else, something easier, like go for a walk, or I don't know, read, just a nicer task. That can drive the perceived cost down and make it a lot easier to start the workflow, and it can also ensure that you don't overspend your energy and end up relapsing because you really don't want to do that work at the moment. Then there is also perceived reward, which is kind of a later thing, and that's when you enjoy the task you're doing. I've had this happen multiple times where I've genuinely enjoyed working. It's been some extremely fun, like the app I'm currently developing, the discipline app. A lot of this type of stuff has been quite enjoyable, understanding exactly how discipline works and turning it into a full system that others can learn. Perceived reward can make doing it a lot more fun, and so it offsets a lot of other things, and the energy cost would be a lot lower. On the last side, we have healthy, and this is pretty much the opposite of misery. Healthy is where you genuinely feel good, you're full of energy, and it's just nice to live at the moment. Your body's in good shape, and when you do feel good, it's a lot easier to do the task. On the third section, we have reserve, which is pretty much how much energy you have left over after doing all the passives, and just how much max energy you have after doing all the passives, all the things you do automatically. There's 4 that I noted down currently. Healthiness is one of the best ways to increase energy, because if you remember the earliest point I had, it's that we're physical beings. We use up our energy, our physical energy so the brain has a limited amount of energy. One of the best ways to increase that is to just be healthy. Another one is habits. Having habits, offsetting decision fatigue, which is having to make too many decisions, can both really benefit your energy reserves. If you're finding yourself having to choose what to do throughout the entire day, you're going to find yourself having a lot less energy to work with when it comes to actual work. This goes back to the previous thing I mentioned, which is the fast system. The more things you put from slow system to the fast system, the less time you will be in the slow system, and obviously the more energy you will save, and you'll have a lot more to work with in the slow system. And finally, there's misery, where again, if you aren't very motivated, or if you're not feeling that great, doing any task will be hard, and that'll in the end offset your energy to be a lot lower. So when the time comes to do the task, you'll have a lot less energy to work with. Then there is framing, which is finally how hard is it really, and that's just understanding how much pain you have gone through initially. So there's pain comparison, pain adjustment, which I'll go over right now. All right, so let's say this is you in the beginning, and you have a little bit of pain tolerance, you have a little bit of pain adjustment, which is what I'm going to explain in a second. So pain tolerance is the level that isn't really that bad, to be honest, where you're kind of used to this level and it's kind of the status quo. Now, pain adjustment is the level you can handle, right? So let's say you have something really unfortunate that happens. Well, your pain will probably go up really high, way above where you used to. Now, your pain comparison will make it so that the bar for what you're used to and what really isn't that hard to do will raise itself. Of course, that makes sense. If you've gone through something really hard, doing tasks that you've seen as hard initially just aren't that hard anymore. But what'll happen next is the pain adjustment. Not only will you get used to not seeing easy tasks as hard, you'll also start getting used to being in pain and having painful situations. So the actual bar would be here instead of here when it comes to the tasks you can do. You get more adjusted to being in pain, feeling pain, and doing hard work. Next in the corner here, I've also put knowing your limits. Now, knowing your limits is a lot more of a mental type of thing compared to the pain. It's truly knowing how hard you can go, how much work you can actually get done in a single day or a single week or a single hour. It's just understanding how hard how far your best is. If you don't know your limits, usually you think that 3 hours of work after your 9 to 5 is enough. But if you knew your true limits and you knew that you could probably sleep on like 6 hours a day and still get a lot of work done in those hours. I'm not saying you should, but doing those 3 hours of work would be a lot easier than you currently think they are. One of the known ways to increase your knowing limits is to give 100% for a very short while, a genuine 100% where you try to do everything perfectly. And after doing that, you now have established your new limits, and doing hard tasks is a lot easier. Costs a lot less energy from the brain because it is a lot easier to what you did before. And that also prevents a few of the brain obstacles that your brain sets before you. Things like, you're pushing yourself really hard, or you're already working quite hard. If you already know that you really aren't and you're actually barely touching the surface, then it makes you work a lot harder. Now, to show a difference between these two, this is a lot more of a mental and specific type of thing, while this is a general, more broad topic of pain in general. If you faced really hard work before, if you've gone through really hard things, a little bit of work isn't really that hard to you. But this is if you if you know or have done yourself how much further you can go, you yourself can, it increases your framing capacity. So I've covered energy maxing, but there is actually one more quadrant that I wanted to capture, and this is more about being aware of your energy levels. So I've split it into 5 type of stages or zones. You have the withering stage, you have the plateau stage, the optimal stage, the warning stage, and the danger stage. Now, you want to be in the optimal stage. If you're in the withering or the plateau, you want to get to the optimal. If you're in the warning and the danger, you want to get to the optimal. So this will be changing depending on how much work you do. Here you should do more work to get into optimal stage, and here you should do less work to get into optimal stage. And I'll cover why it's very important that you stay here and very much take these warnings. But first, let me just start with the withering stage. So the withering stage would be a lot more of a fun type of stage. This is where you're kind of enjoying your life to the fullest, and the day has been nothing hard, and you wish every day was like this. And it's quite self-explanatory. It's just a day that you really, really enjoy, and you don't necessarily do anything that hard. Just chill. Now, the 2 biggest things is identity and pain tolerance. You kind of just start to forget why you're doing this entire thing, but after a while you do start to worsen your discipline. In the plateau stage, it's good type of, it's good to be there. Life's good. You have very few hard work moments. Usually you don't do work if you feel like it, and it's quite comfortable. The plateau stage is one of the stages that you could end up in sometimes, and in some cases it'll actually be okay, but generally you do want to go back into the optimal stage. But there are moments where I've had plateau stage and they were actually still increasing my discipline, but it's very, very rare you want to be in this stage. Now, to explain a little bit about this, at the end of every day you end up in either ones of these stages. Of course, you can be in any of these stages throughout the day, and you should measure yourself in these stages. And if you start seeing big warnings that you're in this stage or this stage, you should start doing either less work or more work depending on the stage that you're at. This is the optimal stage, and you'd only describe this stage as quite rough. You're pushing yourself, but to a point where it's kind of enjoyable. Like, you're at the end of the work, you go, you end your work, and you're enjoying it. Okay, you finish your work session and you're happy that you did it. You're happy that of all the work you've done. You look back at the day and you're satisfied with it, and that's the optimal stage that you want to be at. And for optimal stage, some of the qualifiers is consistency. So even though you don't feel like it, you do the bare minimum. Now, obviously, you don't want to set the bar too high for the bare minimum, but you still try and push through, at least for the small tasks. You're all right with it. This is the kind of stage that you go to bed and it's not necessarily as fun as these 2, but you know what? It's making you better, and a part of it does enjoy it. And this is important, that the brain does protest at the beginning of work. Obviously, that's not always going to be the case, but I want to preface this for the beginning of work, because when the brain starts protesting throughout the work and throughout the entire work session, then you're starting to be in the warning stage. And I might have explained why previously, but misery is a very, very big energy consumer. It'll make you relapse really fast if you don't pay attention to it, and that's why. And while we're talking about warning stage, since we're talking about, let's move on to the warning stage. You describe it as painful, and this is to the point where you're trying to ignore desire completely, and the brain starts protesting throughout the entire work session. So you're halfway an hour in, and it's still really, really not enjoyable. You go to bed, and it's not great. You don't want this to be your life, but a lot of people start conflating this type of stage as a good stage because it's the grind set, and you gotta go through the pain. And yes, sometimes this can be true, but it's not the warning stage that actually raises your pain comparison. You can go through really, really tough times and still have your brain not use up as much energy. Especially when it comes to brain protesting throughout work, this is where you can conflate the difference between the two types of pain. When you protest through work, you should have, for it to be in the warning stage, you would have a choice to stop working. And that's one of the main reasons why it would protest so hard. If you've set up your life correctly so that you have really strong purpose, goals, desire, punishment, and it's really clear why you should keep doing this, you can go through a lot more pain and you can do a lot harder things. Increase your pain comparison, increase your pain adjustment, and know your limits. So even do stuff like not sleeping 6 hours and working non-stop. If you have a very strong why, you can do it and you can increase your framing. Now, there's also levels to this where if you've, let's say, slept 8 hours and worked your entire day, then the pain comparison will make it a little bit easier. So there's also levels. You don't want to go from level 0 to 100 real fast. Otherwise, it is going to lead to a relapse, and all of this is just not going to be enough, and you're going to shoot way from optimal stage back to relapse. So the painful stage, it's really important to listen to your brain when it starts to protest throughout your entire work. And that's why I do tell you to, if you start feeling miserable while working, and you do have a choice to, at least if you're a beginner, to quit it and go for a walk or whatever, reset, then try again for a couple of minutes, see how you go. Otherwise, it's just going to take so many resources. And by the way, you're not even going to get that much work done anyway. You're just doing it for the ego of it. You won't be able to concentrate, and you're just not going to get the work done anyway. So it's just not worth it. And also, this is where you start feeling cravings. If you feel cravings, then you should be you should be aware, and you should try to, at the very least, set up your life in a way that you don't relapse. Cravings are very big warnings. You shouldn't be feeling cravings. Of course, if you just quit social media, you are in the warning stage, I would say, by default, and you should try to not get as much work done. This is a very big strategy that I would recommend you. You fill it up with a lot of small tasks, like walking or reading books, small, easy tasks that aren't as hard on the brain and aren't that hard to do, to actually quit it, because otherwise you're just going to have your dopamine level be extremely low, and you're going to feel some misery. You're going to start spending a lot of energy, and you're going to relapse. And this is why people don't make it past before day 7, is they all of a sudden quit social media, and they think that the type of person who's disciplined now, when they're led by motivation, they don't recover. That's the thing. Don't recover. Lots of misery. The reserves go to 0, and they try to keep up the cost, even though the misery and the resolve drains. Anyway, now we're moving on to the danger zone, and this is where you think that you barely made it. You barely made it without relapsing, without doing anything doing anything bad. This is where you really gotta take a step back and maybe ease up on the work a little bit, because I've had dangerous stages a couple of times, and they're always the day before relapse, because usually it's not you going straight from optimal stage to relapse. Even if you make your day harder, even if you suddenly make the day a lot harder, you did this only because you're motivated to do it, and motivation lasts a couple of days before it drains. So usually you go from optimal stage to warning stage to danger stage, and the danger stage is really where you gotta understand that it will hit you if you don't slow down. And at the danger stage, you start having headaches, and this is purely from resisting. This is purely, you're probably at the moment now where you actually get voices inside your head telling you to go scroll. This has happened to me. You get big cravings. Again, you have very close calls where confusion happens, and you really aren't sure what to do anything anymore. And yeah, it's just overall really, really hard to be in this stage, and you don't want to be in the stage. So this is all the zones. I hope this shifted your perspective and you learned a lot. So in conclusion, make sure that you're paying attention to which zone you are at the end of each day and shift your workload accordingly. And also make sure to optimize all these 4 quadrants. And you'll find yourself being a lot more disciplined and it being a lot more easier to do all these tasks. Hey, thanks for watching the video. Just before you click any other videos, just got a bit of an announcement. I am actually making a bit of an app to employ a lot of this and a lot of the other things I haven't mentioned in this video or in any videos yet that will help you get more disciplined. It'll create a few of the other systems to help you improve all of these sections. And I also do have a Discord server where you can join and talk directly to me and have a bit of a discussion about discipline. The links are below. It'll all be found in the Discord server.